the most adored comedian in the world, was a child who stumbled so much that his classmates referred to him as an alien. However, Rowan Atkinson had to pay a price for his metamorphosis. He found that when he performed, his stammer totally vanished. However, only then will each Mr. He was emotionally spent after the Bean incident. He described the persona as draining and eagerly anticipated the filming's conclusion. The comedian who made millions of people laugh acknowledged that he felt like a fake. At 70, he is now disclosing how his early trauma influenced everything. At last, the mute comedian discovered a way to express his narrative. On January 6, 1955, Rowan Sebastian Atkinson was born in Consett, a tiny town in County Durham, England. Despite being the youngest of 4 boys, a tragic event occurred before he was old enough to recall it. Only 3 brothers remained after his oldest brother, Paul, passed away when he was still a baby. Later, Rodney, one of Rowan's brothers, became an economist and nearly led the UK Independence Party in 2000. Rowan had a very tranquil and orderly upbringing on a farm. The irony is that he would eventually gain notoriety for portraying loud, goofy characters. Rowan began experiencing severe stuttering when he was just 5 years old. His inability to speak clearly made education quite difficult for him. Bullying was brutal at Durham Chester School, which he attended. There, Canon John Grove recalled Rowan as a quiet youngster, with a speech impediment and a rubbery face. He even appeared to be alien-looking, according to some of his classmates. They chuckled at his appearance and speech patterns. And Rowan was by himself much of the time. Tony Blair, the future Prime Minister, was one of the students at that school. Tony, who was 2 years younger, recalled Rowan's difficult circumstances. The bullying was so severe that it was covered in a 2007 piece in The Independent. However, when Rowan took the stage, an odd event occurred. He would no longer stutter at all. He would have no issue performing. That traumatic event from his early years turned to become the secret of his talent. Rowan excelled academically despite the bullying. In 1973, he was accepted to Newcastle University after receiving excellent scores in his science A-levels. He began studying electrical and electronic engineering at the age of 18. Instead of a comedian, they assumed he would become a scientist or an engineer. At the age of 20, he received his diploma in 1975. He then pursued a master's degree at Queen's College, Oxford, following in his father's footsteps. Self-tuning control systems are a fairly complicated topic that was the focus of his MSc. He even began, but never completed, a doctoral dissertation. He sensed that something was drawing him in a different way. Chris Robson, his teacher, once remarked that Rowan didn't stand out in class. However, he changed completely as he took the stage. The true change started at that point. In 1975, while attending Oxford, Rowan became a member of the Etc. Review Group and the Theatre Club. He met Richard Curtis, a young writer, around this time. Their lives would be altered by this encounter. In early 1976, Richard watched Rowan perform for the first time during a practice. Later on, he claimed that a quiet, humorous-looking man was standing in the corner. Richard, however, was astounded when Rowan eventually gave a performance. Rowan drew a comedy about driving and included a scene in which he spoke and mimed simultaneously. Richard referred to it as pure genius. In August 1976, Rowan gave a performance at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe with the Oxford Review. He had never performed in front of a large national audience before. With the popularity of the show, Rowan's future became evident. He was no longer merely an engineer, he was an entertainer. While still enrolled at Oxford, Rowan formally began his electrical engineering master's program in 1975. He conducted thorough investigation, and his thesis was published in 1978. However, his acting time increased. It was complicated by the clash between comedy and engineering. Nevertheless, he retained that technical background. He would go on to become one of the first famous people to purchase electric vehicles years later. He purchased his first totally electric vehicle 9 years before to 2023, and his first hybrid 18 years prior. Additionally, he spoke negatively about environmental claims and electric vehicle technologies using his expertise. Nevertheless, it was evident that comedy was his true love despite everything. He had made the theater his home. When he developed a radio program for BBC Radio 3 called The Atkinson People in 1979, it was his first significant moment. He portrayed a number of imaginary figures, including French philosopher George Dupont and Sir Corin Basin. Griff Rhys-Jones produced it, and Richard Curtis contributed to its writing. Despite being intelligent and humorous, the show didn't receive many listeners. Few people heard it because it was broadcast during a time slot not intended for comedies. Critics nevertheless recognized his talent. Similar to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it was recorded in stereo. It demonstrated that Rowan was prepared for something greater, even though it didn't make him famous. The years 1978, 1979 were difficult. He was repeatedly turned down by the BBC. His humor was incomprehensible to them. He was depressed and lost. He considered giving up comedy and returning to engineering at one point. However, something occurred that altered everything. He discovered that his stammer disappeared when he was acting. He gained authority from the discovery. He didn't have to speak in his own words. He could let the characters speak for themselves. Rowan continued working with others he had known at Oxford, such as Angus Deaton. Angus frequently portrayed the somber straight man during their radio appearances together. Rowan's crazy characteristics were able to bloom as a result. Later on, Angus made appearances in Mr. Bean and a Blackadder episode. At a time when TV was still rejecting him, Rowan found faith in their partnership. It allowed him to develop without the constant strain of being on television. Rowan returned to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 1979. He was 24 now. At the new Wireworks Theatre, he was even spotted clearing debris and assisting with stage construction. Like an old Buster Keaton movie, his act was largely silent. Others noticed something unique, while others didn't understand and even left. He made use of his body and face in a manner that few comedians could. He was able to make the proper connections in the sector thanks to his performance. He made another attempt at TV by 1980. Canned Laughter, a pilot he produced, debuted in 1979. Among his many roles was an early iteration of Mr. Bean. Despite its cleverness, the show was not picked up for a series. During numerous of these auditions, his stammer reappeared, adding to the tension. However, he started to learn how to defeat it. He fully immersed himself in his roles. He had perfected the art of using performance to conceal his stutter by the time he made his Wogan debut in 1980, at the age of 25. That marked the start of the struggle's end. The world started to notice a weird, silent youngster who had transformed suffering into joy from that very moment. The life of Rowan Atkinson was permanently altered. In 1979, the BBC offered him a spot on a brand new comedy program called Not the 9:00 News. A general election caused it to be postponed from its original April broadcast date. At the time, the BBC believed the show might be too political. On October 16, 1979, the first episode was eventually shown. However, things didn't work out. Very few people watched it. Fewer than 1 million people watched. Critics detested it. It should never be shown on television, according to some, who also termed it offensive. It was the worst half-hour of TV I've ever seen, remarked Mel Smith, who would go on to become a close co-star. Surprisingly, however, the BBC controller found it appealing. Without delay, he placed an order for another set. Because of that choice, the program was salvaged and became one of the most significant British comedies ever. Rowan collaborated with Pamela Stephenson, Griff Rhys-Jones, and Mel Smith, all of whom went on to achieve fame. It wasn't always easy behind the scenes. Chris Langham was let go after just one series in 1980. This did not sit well with Rowan. By demonstrating his loyalty, he attempted to persuade the producers to keep Chris, but Griff Rhys-Jones took his place. Chris was unable to communicate with any of them for years due to the intense consequences. Furthermore, the BBC began reducing the budget for the program. They even made jokes about it in an episode titled The Outrageously Expensive, Not the 9:00 News, since it got that terrible. They were forced to reduce minor roles and discontinue filming in upscale settings. Rowan's serious and meticulous side began to emerge at this period. The show's tone also shifted. It shifted away from shock humor and toward witty and strange comedy. Creative disputes behind closed doors were evident. Then came the turning point in Rowan's life. Gerald the Gorilla was a sketch that appeared during the second series in 1980. A professor who claimed to have trained a gorilla named Gerald was portrayed by Mel Smith. However, Rowan's portrayal of Gerald in a gorilla suit revealed that he was both more intelligent and angry than anyone had anticipated. Gerald yelled, "Wild!" I was absolutely livid. That line became famous when the professor claimed to have captured him in the wild in 1968. As a result of the sketch's widespread popularity, actual scientists began mockingly referring to groupings of baboons as a flange. The episode contributed to the show's 1982 Montreux Festival Silver Rose. Additionally, it took up the BAFTA Award for Best Light Entertainment Program. Rowan's career as a master of odd humor and physical comedy began with that one sketch. It also prepared him for his subsequent parts in Mr. Bean and Blackadder. An even more unexpected event occurred in 1981. I Like Trucking, a comedic song from the show's album Hedgehog Sandwich, was published. The song was successful. Despite having no prior musical experience, Rowan ended up appearing on a charting single. In the sketch, Rowan actually drove the vehicle as the other four actors sang it together. He wasn't acting. At the time, he had a legitimate Class 1 lorry license. That little detail added to the sketch's humor and authenticity. After being released as a single under BBC recordings, the song gained enough popularity to eventually appear on BBC compilations. It demonstrated that Rowan was more than a sketch comic. He was capable of more. He was capable at driving, acting, singing, and entertaining in a variety of settings. However, things started to go south in 1982. It wasn't the ratings that caused the show to stop in March of that year. Rowan and the rest of the cast had reached a breaking point. They were worn out. The writing, the acting, the pressure, the quick tempo, and the anxiety. Everything got to be too much. Specifically, Rowan was having difficulties. He had struggled with anxiety for a long time, and the burden was too much for him. Therefore, they left, rather than capitalizing on their accomplishment and pursuing celebrity or wealth. Hollywood was Pamela Stevenson's destination. In 1983, Rowan immediately began filming Blackadder. Alas, Smith & Jones is a show that Mel Smith and Griff Rhys-Jones created. It was uncommon for them to decide to leave in the peak of their success. It demonstrated how highly Rowan regarded his artistic integrity and mental well-being over financial gain. Rowan unveiled the Blackadder on June 15, 1983. It was a crazy notion. Richard Curtis, with whom he had collaborated on Not the 900 News, co-created it. In their idealized universe, Richard III had prevailed at Bosworth Field. They used massive sets and costumes, and Rowan played Prince Edmund, the cunning and power-hungry son of King Richard IV. The filming took place at Elwick Castle. The show was a huge risk. Even Australia's Seven Network provided some funding for it. To make a joke, they included extra dialogue by William Shakespeare in the credits. Although it was a creative leap, the cost was high. The BBC almost cancelled the first series because the costs were so exorbitant. The shoots continued to be ruined by rain. Filming at the castle took a long time. The budget was blown up by the enormous cast lists and period clothes. Even the reviews weren't very positive. It wasn't as hilarious as Rowan's previous work, according to critics. The show's foreign Emmy victory was the only thing that saved it. The BBC felt confident enough to give it another try after that prize. However, they made significant adjustments this time. No more large sets, no more castles. The following season would be sharper, more affordable, and smaller. The future of the show was drastically altered by that choice. Blackadder 2 debuted in 1986. It was all brand new. Ben Elton joined as a co-writer, contributing tighter plots and quicker humor. They shifted their attention to human moments and abandoned the massive movie scenes. Bigger actors like Brian Blessed no longer had to share the limelight with Rowan. Now he was the star. The cast was one of the most significant adjustments. Audiences instantly adored Miranda Richardson's portrayal of Queenie, a noisy and amusing queen. There were other notable cameos, such as the inimitable Tom Baker as Redbeard Rum. Baldrick, who was formerly intelligent, became the endearing fool that fans loved, while Rowan's character Edmund grew sardonic and cunning. Some supporters were first displeased. Rowan Wallen was even dubbed E of the Week by a critic. However, popular sentiment shifted over time. This version was even better, they realized. The chemistry was flawless, the jokes were more incisive, and the characters were more nuanced. When the last season, Blackadder Goes Forth, premiered in 1989, it was unexpected. It took place in the First World War trenches. Captain Blackadder was portrayed by Rowan. Private Baldrick was Tony Robinson, and Lieutenant George was Hugh Laurie. It was both humorous and serious. Without losing its comedy, it demonstrated the futility of war. It wasn't disrespectful to make jokes about World War I, despite people's fears. It had strength. At the 1990 BAFTAs, it took home the Best Comedy Series award. The award for Best Light Entertainment Act went to Rowan as well. On the British Film Institute's selection of the greatest British television programs ever, the program came in at number 16 in 2000. Additionally, with more than 282,000 votes, it came in second place in a BBC poll for Britain's finest sitcom of 2004. The soldiers' slow-motion charge into no man's land in the last scene turned into one of the most poignant television endings ever. The cast collaborated like a family behind the scenes. Stephen Fry, Hugh Laurie, and Rowan frequently improvised. They had faith in one another. Rowan once claimed that because the pressure wasn't solely on him, this endeavor was the least difficult of his career. They all carried it together. There was magic about their chemistry. The final episodes retained a large number of the improvised lines. Rowan went on to say that they couldn't replicate what they had in the 1980s. It was a unique moment. Mr. Bean then arrived. 13.45 million people watched the first episode when it aired on January 1990. Years before, Rowan had developed the character while attending Oxford. It was ideal for audiences around the world because he hardly talked in the role of Mr. Bean. A total of 245 nations sold the show. 18.74 million viewers viewed one episode of The Trouble with Mr. Bean. It rose to prominence as one of the world's most watched comedies. To laugh, one did not have to know English. The physical humor transcended all boundaries. However, there was a darker side to all that hilarity. Rowan was in pain. He acknowledged that playing Mr. Bean wasn't fun. It was tense. He was exhausted by it. He claimed that he frequently anticipated the conclusion, and that the obligation felt burdensome. Rowan had to convey everything with his body and expression, because the character hardly spoke. That was emotionally taxing. For the man who performed it, what the outside world perceived as straightforward humor was actually a traumatic experience. Mr. Bean made it to the big screen in 1997. Bean earned over $251 million worldwide. Over $25 million that came from foreign markets. With $3.1 million, it debuted at the top of the charts in Australia. It made $2, shattering opening records in the UK. $5 million. It made more than 12 million Deutsche Marks on its first weekend in Germany. Even before its US release, it became the fastest-grossing film in the United Kingdom. However, Rowan was just more exhausted as a result of all that success. The world demanded more of the character, which he was already having trouble with. He discovered an answer in 2002. He launched the cartoon series Mr. Bean. It lasted from March 1 to November 2004. There were 52 episodes in the series. It was a relief to have this structure. The voice was all Rowan needed to do. No more tiresome physical labor. After gaining popularity among kids, the program was transferred to CITV. It maintained the original while adding new characters. Without endangering Rowan's health, the animated version preserved Mr. Bean's life. The series continued, and it was still being produced in 2024. During the London Olympics in 2012, Rowan returned with Mr. Bean for another live performance. He performed a humorous skit in 26 and Chariots of Fire. In the UK, 9 million people watched it. It was viewed by 900 million people worldwide. Although it was one of the night's most tweeted moments, Rowan suffered greatly as a result of the performance. He was exhausted for weeks as a result. Nowadays, a lot of people consider that to be his final significant physical appearance as Mr. Bean. Even Away from Mr. Rowan continued to take people by surprise. Bean and Blackadder. He performed as an anxious priest at 4 weddings and a funeral in 1994. The film was produced in 6 weeks for a mere $3 million. $245.7 million was earned. He blunders the vows in his wedding scene, which became famous. His next major character was shaped in part by that minor role. He starred in the spy parody Johnny English in 2003. On a $40 million budget, it made $160 million worldwide. His previous Barclaycard advertisements were the catalyst. He did dance routines, physical comedy, and action scenes. Due to its popularity, Johnny English Reborn was released in 2011. Despite only making $8.3 million in the US, it had a $45 million budget. Audiences throughout the world adored it. 2018 saw the release of Johnny English Strikes Again. The narrative featured digital spying and a cyber attack. Rowan added depth to the position by drawing on his actual engineering training from Oxford. The movie connected with viewers concerned about internet safety by striking a balance between classic espionage humor and contemporary cyber anxieties. With Keeping Mom, Rowan tried something new in 2005. He portrayed a preacher handling issues within the family. The film did not perform well. Viewers and critics remained silent. For some, it was too strange. For others, it was too gloomy. Rowan stepped back from film as a result of the failure. He took 2 years off to work on live shows and television, before coming back strong with Johnny English Reborn. In the late 1980s, Rowan Atkinson first got to know Sunetra Sastry. She worked on the BBC show Blackadder as a makeup artist. In order to speak with her, Rowan actually changed makeup artists. His co-star Stephen Fry, who had also intended to ask her out, was subtly disappointed by that. However, Rowan arrived first. On February 5, 1990, they were married in the Russian Tea Room in New York after falling in love. His best man was Stephen Fry. Together they had 2 kids. 1993 saw the birth of their daughter Lily, and 1995 saw the birth of their son Benjamin. They remained together for 24 years, but in 2014 everything was different. Sunetra and Rowan split up that year. November 2015 saw the finalization of the divorce. Sunetra said in court that Rowan was acting irrationally. Simultaneously, Rowan had discreetly begun dating a considerably younger woman, Louise Ford. Sunetra was devastated to have someone so young take her position, and the media was overflowing with news. In March 2001, Rowan experienced a terrible event. His family and he were traveling through Kenya when their private pilot abruptly passed out in mid-air. Despite having no prior aviation experience, Rowan grasped the controls and kept the plane steady. He waited until the pilot awoke and brought the aircraft down safely in Nairobi. At the time, Rowan was 46 years old. The actor who played Mr. Bean revealed something unexpected in that moment. He saved everyone while remaining composed in real life. He doesn't discuss the psychological damage it caused, but if he hadn't moved quickly, the flight would have ended tragically. Many were taken aback by Rowan's address in Parliament in October 2012. It has to do with free speech. He gave a 9-minute speech defending the freedom to express one's opinions, regardless of whether they are offensive to others. He stated that people should have the freedom to express themselves, and that far too many things are deemed objectionable. In a matter of days, that speech received over 140,000 views, but he wasn't universally accepted. He was accused by several progressive activists and LGBTQ+ organizations of defending hate speech. The legislation did, however, change. The Public Order Act's section prohibiting derogatory language was eliminated. People came to see that Rowan was more than just a comedian. He didn't hesitate to voice his strong ideas. Rowan started a new relationship in 2013 while performing in a play called Quatermain's Terms. His age was 58. Louise Ford, his co-star, was 31. In order to be with Rowan, she broke up with comic James Acaster. Many referred to their 27-year age difference as a scandal. Around the same time that Rowan and Sunetra split up in 2014, the news broke. Fans and reporters strongly condemned them. However, Rowan remained silent about it. Louise gave birth to their daughter Isela in December 2017. He previously remarked, "The only thing more important than not talking about your personal life is not talking about why you're not talking about it." At age 62, Rowan became a parent once more. Rowan had always been perceived as being in favor of the environment. He has advocated for climate change and driven electric and hybrid vehicles since the 1980s. However, he published a shocking essay in The Guardian in June 2023. "I Love Electric Vehicles" was the title. "I was an early convert, but I'm starting to feel tricked." He claimed in the essay that the production of electric vehicles really results in 70% higher greenhouse gas emissions than that of conventional automobiles. He took issue with EV batteries. Fox Business and other conservative media outlets carried that article's headlines. His allegations were deemed false by environmental scientists, who were incensed. Then it was revealed that Rowan had an extensive collection of supercars, including rare Aston Martins and McLarens. His article was even held accountable by Parliament for holding down EV sales in the UK. Critics claimed that while leading a very high-carbon lifestyle, he aided fossil fuel businesses. In 1994, when Disney offered him the part of Zazu in The Lion King, Rowan declined. His voice became one of the most memorable aspects of the movie, despite his claim that he had never enjoyed voice acting. Globally, The Lion King brought in $968.5 million. It turned into Disney's highest-grossing hand-drawn movie. His Zazu performance was a huge smash, despite the fact that he didn't sing. Even when the 2019 remake generated $1.6 billion, he did not return. He was missed by fans. It was one of those odd times when he achieved one of his greatest professional victories by doing something he didn't want to do. Rowan made a startling admission during an appearance on The Graham Norton Show in 2018. He claimed that filming was incredibly challenging and draining. Nothing he accomplished seemed to be good enough. He had previously expressed his desire to retire Mr. Bean to The Telegraph back in 2012. "It can be a little depressing to see someone in their 50s act like a child," he remarked. However, he had a change of heart in 2016 and declared that he would never retire the character. In 2018, he made another modification and remarked, "Mr. Fans were perplexed, but it was clear how difficult it was for Bean to let go of the persona that made him famous," when he added, "You must never say never." Millions of people were delighted by Mr. Bean, but Rowan experienced stress and burnout as a result. Rowan made a comeback to physical comedy in 2022 with the Netflix series Man vs. Bee. He portrayed Trevor, a housekeeper who is attempting to eradicate a solitary bee. 10 to 20 minutes were allotted to each of the 9 programs. Filming was difficult for him, but it seemed like pleasure. At 67, Rowan was performing exploits reminiscent of his Mr. Bean days. He acknowledged that he had never been athletic. In addition to being a throwback to the past, Man vs. Bee served as a reminder that his body was no longer capable of supporting the same degree of physical humor. Rowan turned 70 on January 6, 2025. He has been making people laugh for more than 45 years and was born in Newcastle on Tyne. His birthday generated a lot of online discussion. While many fans wished him well and shared their favorite footage, others questioned whether he would soon retire. Rowan had previously stated that performing physical comedy becomes more difficult as one ages. He seems more willing to slow down. Some thought it was time to finally bid Mr. Bean farewell. The official Mr. Bean YouTube channel had over 12.01 billion views and $35.1 million subscribers as of September 2025. Each month, it earned between $77,000 and $232,000. It received between 1.5 and 2.3 million views per day. Fans of the figure might be found in Mumbai, Tokyo, and São Paulo. Comedians such as Sacha Baron Cohen said that they were influenced by Mr. Bean's manner. The Atkinson method is currently taught in comedy schools. It was a straightforward, wordless comedy that was universally relatable. Rowan was dubbed the Charlie Chaplin of the 21st century. He transcended his role as a British actor. He became a worldwide celebrity. A Mr. Bean fan theory was finally verified in September 2024. People thought he was truly an alien for years. In the cartoon episode Double Trouble, that theory proved to be accurate. Inside a spaceship, Mr. Bean encounters clones of himself. According to Screen Rant, the program formally acknowledged that he was not from Earth. It was also alluded at in the first scene of the original episode. Bean, whose name was simply Mr., falls from the heavens while a Latin choir proclaims, "Behold the man who is a bean," without a first name, as if aliens didn't comprehend human naming conventions. Although Rowan had alluded to it once in 1993, it was now included in the narrative. Although horrified, fans were eager to learn the truth. Rowan has an amazing award record despite his self-doubt. He has received 12 major honors and received 18 nominations. He received a Laurence Olivier Award for Rowan Atkinson in Review and a BAFTA for Not the 9:00 News in 1981. He won for Blackadder, Goes Forth's Best Light Entertainment Performance in 1990. Between 1991 and 1994, Mr. Bean received 4 BAFTA nominations on his own. He received an International Emmy as well. Rowan continues to claim that he doesn't feel successful in spite of everything. He is always asking himself questions. However, he is without a doubt regarded as one of the greatest of all time by admirers worldwide.